I would like to move to technological innovation and digital innovation and what such innovation can do to help us in such a difficult situation. Let's start with video clip. We have with us Giorgio Metta, Scientific Director of the Italian Institute of Technology. Good afternoon, Giorgio. Welcome. How are you? I'm fine. Where are you? I'm in Genoa. I'm at home, of course. First of all, you are the director of the Italian Institute of Technology, and more than 700 researchers from 60 countries all over the world work for your institute. So this is really the heart of Italian research. And we really want to promote your work, and we would like to understand what you're doing and how your institute is reacting to this emergency. Well, there is a practical aspect. So we want to carry out research, of course, but at the same time, we try and find practical solutions to the emergency caused by coronavirus. So we had to find new ways. So smart working was necessary, but at the same time, we wanted to continue to work at our labs. But at the same time, we made our engineers and researchers available to the country in order to develop solutions to face such an emergency. Starting from drug simulations to mask adaptation, or even the manufacturing of adapters or parts which are needed for respirators, for example. And at the same time, data analysis or even image analysis, because we are trying to create apps for social distancing as well. We are working in many different fields, and we try and do something useful and do that in a very fast way. We know that you also work in the robotics, which has a lot to do with what we are facing today. Well, what is surprising is that our engineers came up with many and varied solutions. For example, the 3D printing for parts for respirators, or the manufacturing of full face masks, or even using our molecular analysis in order to understand what products are the most effective ones. So all this was done, of course, in a hurry, because in such a situation, well, we can decide anything, but it is important to get to the final product as soon as possible. So we looked for simple solutions and solutions that could be applied fast. Robotics, maybe this belongs to the future. I think robotics will be really useful in the future, for example, to make sure that plants and factories work, even if we reduce the number of workers, so in order to ensure that we continue to produce and manufacture. We, of course, trust your work and robotics, in particular, the very positive applications in the health care industry. I have another question for you, and after you, actually, our friends from Isinnova will take the floor, and they have patented a specific valve for respirator. But I have a question for you first. Now, we can say that the scientific community in the last few months was not listened to, and I mean, the opinion of the scientific community was not taken into consideration enough. What do you think about the future? Is the role of scientific community is going to change or not? Well, of course, I am a member of a scientific community, and I think that we should all rely on science, in particular when very difficult decisions have to be taken. We should look at scientific evidence. We should look at data. So this is, I think, the most important message we would like to convey. So we should trust, we should be confident and trust science and the scientific community. For the aftermath, well, I think that investing in research, in the app creation, well, this is the best way to restart and to go back to our normal lives. We must not forget science and research, because otherwise we wouldn't have foundations for competitiveness. This was true in the past, but it will be even more important in the future. Thank you so much. Thank you to the director of the IIT, and thank you to all the researchers. Right, so we are now really digging into innovation and how innovation can improve our society and can help us face such a difficult situation. And the next speakers will be examples of Italian creativity and innovation, so very talented people who came up with ideas in order to face the coronavirus difficulties. And let's start with the next speaker. Let's watch a video clip together.
So today with us is Lorenzo Abeni, Marco Ruotto, both from Isinnova. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. So guys, together with your Isinnova team, you are created out of the blue something that went into the newspaper headlines, all of the magazines and newspapers. So basically you had this invention, this idea of patenting the Decathlon mask respirator. Everybody knows that now. It's something that is well known. But first of all, we'd like to thank you, because this application, this patent, is for sure useful for everybody, not just in Italy. Can you please tell us something about it, how you came to the idea of this patent? Tell us something. So first of all, let's say that what started the whole thing was something that happened a few days before the Decathlon mask, because we came out with this valve, which is a mixing valve to mix oxygen before administering oxygen to intensive care patients. A hospital in our area ran out of these valves. The supplier wasn't able to supply the valves on time or in reasonable time to tackle with emergency, and So the Brescia society is very small, and we know each other in terms of 3D printing facilities and so on and so forth. So the hospital was in touch with us. We tried to understand what we could do. We took a valve, and thanks to our team, we printed some of the valves and brought them to the hospital. They tested them, they were working, and therefore this event had media impact, of course, and the main physician of the therapy unit explained this to everybody, and also found a very vital component for the masks and asked us to develop it. So we tried to understand what we could do. And the idea was to use something that was already available in the market and possibly change it, modify it in order to adapt it to intensive therapy treatment. And the mask that was very well known all over the world, it's a very well-known and widespread snorkeling mask by Decathlon, was the ideal element. We understood how to change it, to adapt it, and then we came out with this valve, this connection valve, or as connection unit. So we came out with injection molds for 3D printing, and we printed it. And of course, all of the makers were involved in this. All of those who wanted to cover it in a platform made themselves available to cover it with the hospitals and print. So we asked Decathlon as well to make the project of the masks available. There were associations that collected the masks and sanitized the masks in order to use them, and the project started then. Several hospitals are actually using these devices. So this is the whole picture, and this is a description of how the patent was introduced. So you showed us the main stages. What are the relationships you have with the hospitals right now, and what are the next steps for the future? Well, at first the project was introduced in Lombardy, and the Chiari Hospital was very precious for tests of those patients, especially for medical reports and advice. And then we started with the Bristol Hospital as well, which is bigger and more important in terms of tests we can perform. But in the meantime, the idea was published in newspapers, and the main hospitals in Italy started to call us. So Rovere Hospital, Novara Hospital, Messina Hospital, Tuscan hospitals. So it's no longer under our control, basically, but this is positive because our idea was to implement an open source project where demand and offer could meet each other without any intermediate partner, without any bottleneck in a way in between, because of course we weren't able to manage the whole demand all over Italy, and therefore we published everything in our website, which is www.isinnova.it, easy COVID-19, and we made everything available to the hospitals. And the offer was so wide that we had to come up with an industrial mold. We also expanded to foreign countries. In average developing countries like Tunisia, Uzbekistan, and other countries, but also advanced countries like Germany, UK, US. And we're also in touch with some Southeast Asian countries which wanted the file and asked for some explanations of the project in order to implement the project in those countries as well. So the project went well and went how we planned, because it's an open source project and many hospitals independently implemented their masks and their experimentation stages. So we stated, of course, that this tool has to be used in emergency situations when certified medical devices are no longer available, depending on the requests, of course, and the numbers, of course. But overall, the feedback was very positive because hospitals keep using them. We are still cooperating with the hospitals in our area to improve the system, to make tests. We're also in touch with institutions and official bodies who asked us to make some tests and wanted some reports to show that everything is going well as it is supposed to be. And of course, everything turned into an international cooperation. In our website, when we opened the Makers Forum, we asked the makers to volunteer and to make themselves available on a voluntary basis. And now if we look at the website, we've got a long list of makers from all over the world, from Africa, from South America and the rest of the world. We've got over 1,700 makers from all over the world, private people or companies, bigger, smaller companies who really made themselves available for the tests and to implement the project. This is very good, a very beautiful thing that happened in Italy, but also all over the world. So giving a vision of how important cooperation is the main thing about it, because it's a grassroots level digital innovation. So based on this network, many people were involved. All the makers are very active in this sense. After you, Paolo Mirabelli will tell us something. He's doing something from Cosenza, working on these topics as well. And he is... So we can see how innovation is like music, something that reaches everybody, really. I also wanted to ask you to clarify something that is a question mark for many people, so certified devices and products, because, of course, it's all about it as well. The system was patented, so you've got an invention that is patented, and then products have to be certified. Can you tell us something more about it? So that people that are following us from home, from all over the world, can get this information. Yes, I'm going to say something, then Marco can possibly add something. So we thought that the best way to disseminate the project was to use the so-called compassionate care. So basically, in clear emergency cases and just in emergency cases, when an official supplier is not able to supply the official product, it is allowed, based on the hospital's consent and on the patient's consent. So you need to have two authorizations to use non-certified products. In case, for instance, you need to save a patient's life and you don't have an official product, but you have a non-certified product that can save a life, then it is possible to use it, or at least temporarily, even if you don't have any CE marking. But of course, the ministry and other official bodies need to approve compassionate care as well. Of course, for compassionate care, you need to have some tests. So although these tests are not as detailed and through as the certification tests, but still they can be reliable. As Isinnova, we have little experience in the medical field, namely with another product we are developing, which has nothing to do with COVID. But we know how long the red tape is, to get all the certifications and to get all of the tests done. These certifications are unfortunately not compatible with emergency situations because, of course, the time that you need to get the certification is too long for an emergency situation. So we made an instrument, a tool available for physicians, for doctors to use it when they deem it necessary. From the certification point of view, as Lorenzo said, we've got the authorization to compassionate care use, and this is something that some hospitals are doing in order to use the system and optimize it. Of course, everything's also based on the doctor's conscience and experience. Some topics are very delicate, of course, but we are still cooperating with institutions and hospitals in order to shape all of this, in order to reassure users as well. The situation has not been unlocked yet, but a project was started, which is a different project than the Isinnova one, which will, however, have an impact after the COVID emergency. When the emergency will stop, we will, of course, carry on with this project, and we will conclude it and achieve all of the necessary certifications and steps. And of course, we will make a more in-depth analysis and work. Thank you very much for your work, you and your team. You confirmed the sentence that is written behind you. Ideas without execution, without implementation, are hallucinations. So thank you very much for your work and take care. Okay, very well. So we've listened to how this idea was created and how these masks can be used. Let's now have a look at how other makers are working, because of course there's a strong grassroots level cooperation between them. This is something that is very important to me because it happens in a very important region for me, Calabria. There's a story about how the situation is being tackled, the coronavirus situation. There are areas where innovation is advancing at a very intense pace. But of course, there are areas where some vital elements are neglected, have been neglected for a very long time. And in Calabria, healthcare system has been neglected for a very long time and was lagging behind. So we should have an interest in these areas like Calabria. And there are people like me, like Paolo, or other innovators that are taking care of these areas. So this is also an invitation, so an appeal to you to start again, to think about a new model, a model that is different from the previous one, the recent years. Of course, in these regions, like in Calabria, there is another risk. So the Commissioner Lombardo is the same surname as I have, but is not a relative of mine. There's another risk in these regions, the mafia, the 'ndrangheta, which can have an influence on the healthcare system, of course. So we think that it's important to work together with technological and digital innovation to change the way we do politics. But having said that, let's go back to technological and digital innovation, this grassroots level work of the people that are innovating. And I'd like to invite Paolo Mirabelli. Good afternoon, Paolo.
Good afternoon. How are you? I'm fine. I have a broken knee, but I'm at home and so I can do lots of things. Okay, we have been talking to each other quite a lot, and we know that a lot of makers and manufacturers are doing a lot of things. We will have a platform available soon for interaction. Can you tell us more about what you are doing in order to combat such virus and provide solutions for this crisis? Well, everything has been hectic and fast. I was working in my pajamas, and some projects just started in a very natural way, and we wanted to come up with solutions, even partial ones. And so we met on Facebook, but also through local groups, and we try, first of all, to be careful and to think a lot about what we're doing. So we just don't want to print whatever. We want to be very careful and working with lots of makers and players. And we do that not for profit, and this is important. I just would like to make a comment. You said printing. I mean, printing for you, of course, you're talking about a 3D printing, but can you tell us more in terms of 3D printing? Well, we started in 2012, but now I'm still in love with 3D printing, which is the best way to manufacture products. We are in Cosenza, in the south of Italy. We are working on an intubation box, which is quite simple. So we should have come up with this idea much earlier. So basically, I met a doctor, and we had to create a clear box made of polycarbonate for the intubation of patients, ensuring safety, in particular safety of workers and healthcare workers. So this is the project, and this is what I invented at home. So this is the intubation box, and this is helpful for patients, of course. And we also have another project. The project is aimed at modifying masks. Of course, we have been collaborating with international groups, and basically in Milan, they do design the product, and I do print the product myself, and then the product is tested. So the idea is to create personal protective equipment for the healthcare workers. And I think we have been working on that for 14 days continuously. So we design, we print, and we test the products. Of course, we want to ensure the safety standards, the safety of physicians and patients, of course. Of course, we are in an emergency. And, for example, I discovered that at the university of my city, they do have a lab where they test products and where they can test products. Of course, we know that these products are for compassionate use, but before providing these products to the workers, we want at least to test them, which is something which is still missing. Do you have something to show us? I can show you the intubation box. It is the clear box that you see over there. Okay, we can see it. I get in closer. It's such a simple idea that you really think I should have done that much before. It's like a barrier, basically. We are also adapting and changing it. So we want to make it even more smart. And I want to disclose what we are doing, but for example, we would like it to become a sort of a globe box, and we are also working on sensors. And I think that tomorrow, the first box will reach the hospital, and the head of the hospital will test it and see whether it is possible to test it with the patient. Okay, now we can see you perfectly. Okay. A very last question for you. As Maurizio was saying, there is now a strong network of cooperation. Can you confirm it internationally among all makers, but also all the people interested in innovation? So in your city, but also in other parts of the world. Well, actually, when there is a need which rises, then you see a lot of calls and a lot of people want to participate. Of course, this cooperation is international, so worldwide. The most important thing to us is to find research documents to be inspired of in order to take best practices. And it is very important to meet researchers or to get into contact with experts and professionals. For example, in Milan, are dealing with these things for such a long time. So everything is faster, everything is open source, and we have created, for example, a specific dedicated account with no reference to companies or universities. So the model is made available to everybody. Every person can download and use it or modify it, and everything is so fast. It's happening so fast that sometimes I don't even have time to wear clean clothes or to get rest, because you want your knowledge and know-how to be shared and to be made available to other people. So we just don't want to print whatever, but we want to be based on evidence, because we try to satisfy needs, but at the same time complying with the safety standards. Well, congratulations for what you are doing. It would be nice to see such a cooperation throughout the year, not just in a time of emergency. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation. Thank you. So, Isinnova, that was the first company. Then we have talked to Paolo, Mirabelli. And now we would like to show you another project, a project about a mechanical ventilator. The project is carried out in Milan, and the next speaker is Giuseppe Gorini.
Good afternoon, Giuseppe. Good afternoon. Everything fine? Yes, pretty much. Connected from Milan? Yes. I'm speaking to you from the University of Milan. Okay, we were talking about this Italian innovation project. We will go on to international projects later on from other parts of the world, and we will be dealing with projects that will be launched. So we've got startups which are going to implement these projects, but now we are talking about other projects, such as yours. You are working at a ventilator, for instance. Can you please tell us something about it? Yes. We'll use a presentation to make myself clearer. Yes, you can share your screen. Once again, Giuseppe's working in the Biotec University of Milan. They are developing a ventilator. And this is a project belonging to the university, developed in the university. So are we ready with the presentation? Yes. Okay. Yes. The name is Milano Ventilatore Meccanico, mechanical Milano ventilator, and I work in the Bicocca University of Milan, but this started, of course, within a wider cooperation project. The main idea is this. You can see a very simple description of the object itself and how it's going to be produced as a first complete prototype. So it's a ventilator that can be used for any patient's requirements in the COVID emergency. So the idea really started and came from Christian Abbiati, a professor of the Christian University. And we started an international cooperation with them. And in a few weeks' time, the cooperation brought about these results. In the picture, you can see a shot from our experience when the device was developed in the top version. Here you can see Professor Carlo Mopelli of the Polytechnical Unit of the University of Milan. But the main idea of this device is to simplify components, to make mechanical components as simple as possible, especially in the pneumatic system. And this for a very simple reason, in order to make reproduction easier. So to produce a big amount of such devices in a short time. In order to do this, of course, it is necessary to have all of the components available in the market. In such a situation, like today's situations, where we have a block of all of the borders and activities, it's of course difficult to get these components, especially in Italy. So we made the mechanical functioning easier, and thanks to an ECU, an electronic unit, we can manage the whole system. The ECU is, on the other hand, very sophisticated and very complex in order to comply with all of the necessary requirements in the clinical field. So in order to have a better performance. So these are the two main aspects, combined aspects we want to implement, and which are also the novelty in this product. Simplification also brings about cost reduction, implies cost reduction. This is the functioning diagram of the system. It's not that interesting to see the details, but in the end to understand that the number of components is quite limited. So here you can see a detailed picture of the device during the tests. In the middle, you can see the ECU, the electronic unit, the control unit that has to control the whole device, the whole components in the device. So this adventure, so to speak, started a few weeks ago based on the idea by Christian Abbiati, and many other subjects and people took part in this initiative. Research institutions in Italy and abroad. So in the national field, so in Italy we can see in general that the institutions wanted to reply to this demand, to this emergency. So we managed to involve INFN, several universities in Lombardy, the Science Institute, the CNR, and many companies came in as well, together with Elemaster, for instance, which is a company in the Lecco province where tests are being performed, and other companies joined in as well. We invited them. We, as scientists, invited these companies, also based on the relationships we had with them, because, of course, these are the companies that are usually helping us implementing bigger research projects, because they are making instruments and equipment available to us for the tests, for scientific experimenting and experimentation. So they basically made themselves available and helped us. in this new challenge. So, Professor, in terms of timing, when do you think you will be able to implement this or to make it available? Well, we are about to test the first device, the first complete device. I can show you something. This is a CAD picture, so a 3D simulation picture. And of course, we will produce some units like this. This is a 0 version. We will then have another first version, different version, for production by the end of the month. So, in a very short time, basically. Yes, in a few weeks' time. We've got just a few weeks' time. And everything, of course, depends on the results of the tests we are performing right now. But together with us, there's a whole network of international laboratories working with us. So not just the Italian part, but also US, Canada labs, and several practices have already been implemented to get the approval for use in these countries. So we're pretty sure that in a few weeks' time, we will have a production of the same devices also in those countries, because a very important aspect is that all of this is open license. So basically, research and project results will be completely free and available for everybody, for anybody who wants to reproduce, change, or adapt the devices for local needs. So we hope we can give our contribution to the emergency situation, not just in Italy, in the US or in Canada, but maybe also in other countries. Why not? This is something that we are repeating over and over again. This open source, this free cooperation is very important at an international level. I've got a last question for you. Can you hear me? Maybe we've got connection problems. However, Giuseppe has explained and outlined the project, and the project will be ready by the end of the month. And this will be a very practical contribution to the current situation. So we've seen a part of research and technological innovation, 3D printing, and we want to really valorize and appreciate the work of researchers, not just in terms of scientific research, but also technological research. Now, we're going to talk about a molecular study aimed at understanding how to stop the COVID epidemic. This is something we'll talk about with the next presentation with Lidia, Pieri, Sybilla, Biotec. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you and to all the people watching us. First of all, where are you now? I'm at home. I live in Verona. You know that we have a lot of people connected from all over the world. We do have translation into English, of course. Now, you told me something about your study, and your work is a very practical contribution. So I would like you to describe your project. I think you have a presentation. Yes, my presentation is in English, and so this is, of course, in order to help people watching us from abroad. Well, you can decide speak English or Italian. It's up to you, of course. Would you prefer to speak in English?
It's okay.
Yes, okay.
So can you see my screen?
Yes. Okay.
Great.
Now it's okay.
So can I start? Great. So the question is it possible to combine new biotechnologies and modern supercomputers to find a cure for COVID-19? This would be really great. At Sybilla Biotec, we have a cutting-edge new drug discovery technology, and we would like to use it. And the INFN, that is the Italian National Institute for Nuclear Physics, has let us exploit a significant amount of the supercomputers which were used to discover the Higgs boson at CERN, from Higgs boson to biology. Well, this allows us finally to work on COVID disease. At Sybilla Biotec, we discover molecules that can become new drugs. Now, in general, drug discovery is based on finding small molecules which impair the biological activity of specific proteins. There is a problem somehow. Some proteins are apparently undruggable. In Sybilla, we try to drug them because we act in a completely different way. We use an innovative drug discovery protocol that has been developed by our founders. In particular, we use computers and protein folding simulations. Let's see what it means. So what are proteins? Proteins are the molecular nanomachines that perform most of the biological function in cells. All the info about the chemical structure of a protein is encoded in the gene and written down in the RNA. Then the ribosome prints this information in the form of a linear chain of amino acids. At this point, the protein folds and reaches the final conformation, which is called the native state. Only once the native state is reached, the protein becomes biologically active. And traditional pharmacology acts here on the native state to block the biological function of the protein. Instead, we act before, during the folding process. In particular, we stop the folding process in order to suppress the protein expression in cell. How can we do that? Well, during the protein folding, the system spends a lot of time in intermediate states. So we can identify molecules that bind to these intermediate states and interrupt the folding process. So what happens? The protein doesn't get to the native state, and the cell recognizes a problem in this partially unfolded protein and destroys it through a quality control mechanism. This is why our technology is called PPI-FIT, that is to say, pharmacological protein inactivation by folding intermediate targeting. So we don't allow the protein to get its biological function. Now note, targeting an intermediate state could not be done before. Why? Because in order to do that, you have to perform a protein folding simulation at atomic resolution. The standard computational methods would take much more than a human life to simulate the folding of biologically relevant proteins. However, our scientists have developed a more powerful approach which exploits mathematical methods taken from theoretical physics. And this allows us to perform this protein folding simulation with atomic resolution. I think that this innovation is really a beautiful example of how fundamental research can improve the real world. And this in particular was carried out by a researcher of the Italian National Institute for Nuclear Physics. That's why we have this link, which was so important with INFN. Now, our technology has been tested using our new protocol for drug discovery, PPI-FIT. We have actually been able to find molecules which could suppress the expression of different proteins in cells. Look at this example. These are experimental data and show that when the cell is exposed to the molecules that we find with our approach, the expression level of the target protein is reduced. Proteins are disappearing inside the cell. Now, let's understand how Sybilla can help in find a therapy against COVID. Everyone sadly knows this graph. We want to target a protein which is called ACE2. This protein is the cellular receptor of the virus. That is to say, the key that the coronavirus uses to enter the cell and start the viral replication cycle. Now, if we decrease the level, the number of ACE2 in cells, this would reduce the infectious power of the virus. But more important and more generally, ACE2 was reported to be the cellular receptor of both SARS-CoV-1, the virus that caused the epidemic in 2002, and the present SARS-CoV-2. This means that a compound found which is capable of reducing its expression in cell could be useful now, of course, but also possibly in the case of future coronavirus pandemics. This is our pipeline. It consists of 4 steps. First, we have to characterize the protein folding pathway of ACE2. This requires a very large amount of computing time, and we could significantly speed up the simulation as INFN has given us access to their computational infrastructure. After we characterize the druggable pocket on the intermediate state of this protein, we will run a drug screening campaign to find a potential drug. And then we go on in wet lab. We go to the lab in order to test the effect of such molecules in vitro. To test this effect both as far as the expression of ACE2 is concerned as in the case of its effect on the virus. Now look at this movie. It's beautiful, isn't it? This is the preliminary result showing one folding pathway of ACE2. Note that actually the chain spends time in a few intermediate configurations before getting to the native state. We are using 3,000 computing cores of INFN, and in 2 weeks of calculations, we will produce plenty of simulations like this to achieve statistical significance. Here is an example of a well-structured intermediate state that we have already found. And actually, we are very close to the end of the first step of our pipeline because we will be able to release and publish the results on the intermediate state soon after Easter. And then these results will be made available to the scientific community because we hope that everybody that can help will work on this. So this is the people that makes it possible inside Sybilla. Founders and workers. All of them are very important. So I think I can stop.
Okay. Lidia.
Sì? Ti sento ma non riesco a togliere la condivisione dello schermo.
Non ti preoccupare, va benissimo. Va benissimo.
Okay. So the main goal is to block, to stop the virus before it enters the cells, to make sure it doesn't have the key to enter into the cells. And you're saying this is important for the SARS-CoV-2, but could be important also for other viruses. Yes, because such a cell receptor is common to SARS-CoV-1 and SARS-CoV-2, so the pandemic in 2002 and the current pandemic caused by SARS-CoV-2. Of course, we hope there won't be a third epidemic, but if this happens, it is likely that the virus is going to use the same receptor. We hope we have a treatment for COVID-19, and we hope to have a drug soon. And if we manage to do that, we will be ready to face other pandemics caused by SARS-like viruses. Now, it is quite clear that scientific research has been supported by also the technological instruments. You have computing instruments which are so important, and this is very important. So scientific research on one side and technologies on the other. Yes, it was a very fast response, a synergy together with INFN, and we started from the research, basic research, and with the basic research, well, you think about so many things, but then when you have the technological transfer, which comes from basic research, well, this is important because you can use your creativity, the talent of researchers, and then you can create a business line. When the emergency started, we at Sybilla, we decided to invest our resources in ACE2 folding, but with our resources, that process would have been too long. So we contacted the INFN, and they made available to us computational power that was really impressive. I've been working at CERN so many years ago, and these computers actually were made available to us, and we are just a startup, but this actually confirms that everybody's trying to collaborate. It is a very strong collaboration. So collaboration between general practitioners, but also the decision makers of our cities and towns, and so the collaboration between them would be also important. So social innovation as well could be involved, and we hope all the best for the future. Thank you so much for describing your project, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.